So we head from London in the United Kingdom and we go to Ohio in the United States because I'm really, really pleased to have this man alongside me. Welcome to the show, Joe Peak. How are you, good sir? And I'm not going to say belated Happy New Year because we're nearly at the end of January at the time of recording this podcast. But how are things, buddy? Looking ahead to another great season in 24?
Yeah, absolutely. Getting excited for racing season picking back up. We got the Daytona 24 this weekend, so at least here in North America, that kind of for us road racing fans, that's like the season has officially started.
Yeah, and of course, some big news dropped on this man's Twitter account or X account, whatever you want to call it, Elon. I don't care. I'm going to still call it Twitter.
I do too.
That you're going to be on for the full season. Things have been signed lock, stock, and barrel, in the words of a particular film by Guy Ritchie that had a certain Jason Statham in it. That you're going to be in the comms booth for the Porsche Sprint Challenge by Yokohama, mate. You must be pretty damn excited about this new development anyway.
Yeah, I'm super hyped. This is going to be my first series that I'll be on for the full season because I've worked with the SRO folks and got to do some stuff with them thanks to DJ Clark. But it's always kind of been I've kind of been more the stand-in guy, so I get to only jump in where they need me. Whereas this one, I'll be on every single round, and they've got two series technically. There's the North America and there's the West Coast. So I'll be doing both of those and flitting around the continent over the course of 2024. So
yeah, but also let's talk sim racing first of all, because Joe is one of the main people behind GSRC, aka the Global Sim Racing Channel, which I'm now proud to be a part of. I mean, Joe, let's talk about it first of all, because of course you can see that he is actually behind the wheel of a sim rig at the moment, with which looks to be an Elgato Wave 3 in front of you, isn't it? Am I right?
yes, got this a few years ago now on the recommendation of my former business partner, Sean Ambrose. He actually had many years doing live audio before he got into the sim broadcasting scene. So I trust his opinion on audio stuff. And when he was like, "You should try this," I trust him fully and got it. And honestly, it's been great. I haven't had any complaints about sound, and it's USB connected too, which is the other thing because I'm not an audiophile, so I don't have a setup that can get it, an XLR cable all hooked in and everything. I need it to be nice and simple. Just plug it in and go.
It's a bit like with my EPOS H3 gaming headset. It's plug and play. It's 3.5 mm jack, and there you go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, folks, I've had to get a new set because the boom mic is a little bit wonky, let's say. It's a bit taped up at the moment, but at least the good thing is I've managed to get a set which is coming shortly. But how did you get your start in sim racing, Joe? Firstly, I mean, was it behind the wheel or was it behind the microphone? More importantly,
I mean, if we go to the really beginning, it was behind the wheel, and it wasn't even a wheel; it was behind the keyboard. Because I started back in the early '90s on my dad's computer with Indy 500 Simulator, which was like the first iteration of iRacing as Papyrus. I didn't know that at the time, but it definitely built from there because I played a lot of their games like IndyCar Racing 1 and 2, NASCAR Racing. I actually got into Grand Prix Legends, but after the fact because I bought it probably in middle school around the time that it came out, and our computer couldn't handle it. So I had to take it back to what was at the time Babbage's, to date myself, and replace it with another game. And then when I became an adult, I remembered, I was like, man, I bet my computer could handle that now easily. So I went out and I found a copy and discovered there's this whole community surrounding it. And when my friend um, uh, saw me like playing that a lot and posting about it online and being like, here's my lap times, I'm really getting into this. He's like, "Hey, you should check out iRacing." And that was like the beginning of the end. I checked it out, thought like, oh, this is expensive. I'll get a 3-month deal. If I don't like it after 3 months, I don't need it anymore. And my account has not elapsed since I signed up. So yeah.
so that's been quite a few years now. One of the things that I tend to do, I always do research on our guests, and Joe,
Yes.
I'm really quite happy I went to Twitter about this because you and your brood tend to have a bit of a habit of naming dogs after vehicles or transportation. So you've got Caddy, Chopper, Trolley, and the latest is Lotus.
I wondered if you'd bring this up.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like you said, we jokingly called her a gremlin over the years. I was wondering if that might have been Gizmo, so it wouldn't have been vehicle or transportation orientated. But then we could have named her Gremlin, and it still would have worked with the theme with the traditional Homer Simpson right at the end of it. It's always quite funny how some people. I mean, I actually had this conversation with Paul Jeffrey just before. I think it was episode 26. Paul, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but he was talking with Marcello Lotti and then Gabriele Tarquini when he was, doing comms for TCR Europe and TCR World Tour. And one of his dogs is called Lotti, which is short for Charlotte. But if you turn it into male and Italian, Marcello Lotti. So it was like, but it's quite funny how it's something easy to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was honestly completely unintentional because the first two were my wife's dogs first before we had even met, honestly. And Caddy actually is short for cadaver, believe it or not, was her real name.
Okay.
Yeah. It was named by her roommate at the time, but she just became Caddy over time. And then Chopper was according to her, short for Chopper Bopper Boppity Bop.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Now we're getting somewhere with this story. This is what this show means, folks. That
okay.
I find out the inner workings of certain stories, and we have a bit of a laugh about it, and that's the whole point, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were those two, and then Charlie came about. He's actually right behind me right now, asleep.
Bless.
That was his name that the kennel that we adopted him from had named him, and we just loved it so much we're just like going to keep it. By the time we got him, just one day we started thinking about it, and we're like, wow, they're all kind of like vehicles or modes of transportation. That's kind of a neat little thing. Why don't we carry that on? And so when we adopted Lotus, we were going through names and like my wife, she's not into racing at all, but with my interest in it, she was like, you go through like some car manufacturers and find some names. And I came across Lotus. I was like, oh, that's a really cute name. We'll have to go with that. And it just so worked out that like, I on iRacing, I call the Lotus 49s and Lotus 79. So I'm around that name a lot, and it just, it fit until we got to know her personality, and now just complete gremlin dog. Like we call her a garbage princess because she's a complete princess, but not the type that like you bring to a fancy party. Like she apparently was owned by like a homeless person before she went to the shelter system. And you can tell because she is so food driven that like we have to be careful, like on walks, we don't even know how she finds this food. She'll just find it and be like, no, Lotus, like get that out of your mouth. Like it's like she'll eat anything.
Oh, it's a bit like my brother-in-law. We call him the trash can, or the garbage can.
Yes.
So I now know that there is a canine equivalent to my brother-in-law, and it just so happens to be owned by you. Bless her. But yeah, I mean, apart from the sim racing, obviously, let's talk commentary now, because obviously you get bitten by the bug, and it's like start on the keyboard, then iRacing, then it's like, right, I need to get some proper equipment. I need to get the steering wheel, I need to get the racing seat, I need the sim rig. Was it a case of you got to that point where you just thought, hang on, there's an opportunity here that maybe we could do some really cool series, as we could get them broadcasted on YouTube, and then I would imagine from that's how GSRC was thereby propagated and came to be?
It actually came about mostly by accident. I never would have thought I'd become a commentator if you had asked me 10 years ago. Well, I guess it'd be more than 10 years ago now, because we've been doing GSRC 11 years. But basically, I was a video editor first. That was my regular gig. And I was used to working, in entertainment stuff, but I was always I preferred to be behind the camera. I didn't like being in front of the camera at all.
Yeah.
But when GSRC came about, it was basically because a group of friends were all racing in a league that was covered by a different channel, and they eventually weren't able to cover us anymore, and we really weren't happy with the job they were doing. So we kind of looked at each other and said, well, you know how to do this, and you know how to do this, because I had done some live sports in real world, very small time stuff like indoor football and roller derby, interestingly. And I was, I had run the video switcher and stuff like that. So I was like, I threw my hat in immediately. I was like, I want to do this. I loved racing since I could even remember. So of course I want to get involved, but I didn't have the computer that could handle it. So as we were setting it up, the other people in the group were kind of like, well, we still need a commentator. Why don't you try that?
Yeah.
And it's just because I've been an absolute nerd since I can even remember that, like, I had all this knowledge to go on, and it worked out well when I tried it, and they were like, oh, you did a good job. And I was like, oh, cool. Oh, I think I enjoy this. And next thing I know, 11 years later, it's now my career.
That makes two of us, really, because it's really nice that there are so many different outlets. Of course, we have some of the big hitters. We have the likes of RaceBot, which we do here. I think actually yourself and also DJ on some of the broadcasts as well. I've had the pleasure of meeting and getting to know Will Vincent and Connery Maddock, amongst others. Lewis McGlade, I met at the CrowdStrike 24. Of course, you were at PRI back at Indy last December. Got to meet a particular IndyCar legend who's now the sporting director for Arrow McLaren, Mr. Tony Kanaan, who is an absolutely awesome guy.
Yeah.
And you said, 2023 is going pretty well so far on Twitter. But then also to see the fact is, let's talk about the friendship between you and DJ, because you guys have worked together quite a lot. Of course, Ash Vanderlei, she's blazing a trail in esports, sim racing and esports at the moment, and it's great to see another person stateside getting the opportunities provided to them. How did you first meet DJ?
That was literally him emailing me out of the blue. He's always told me that when the pandemic came about, he was bored out of his mind and needed something to do. So he wanted to give a try at commentary stuff. So he just emailed me at GSRC. And I've always kind of been of the mind that, like, because I kind of came out of no experience and managed to figure it out, that I want to give everybody at least a shot. So I was like, yeah, sure, come on in, we'll train you. And it turned out, because of his background in like theater and whatnot, he's just a natural. And it also turned out that he and I hit it off extremely well. Honestly, anytime we're on a gig, we're inseparable. We always are usually hanging out with one another. And he kind of repaid me. But like I said, I got him into commentary, and when he got the opportunity with SRO, and they needed someone, he pushed really hard for them to give me a shot, and that was my foot in the door, and I can't thank him enough for that.
It's always that case where, that opportunity of paying it forward, and that's a really, really good way of showcasing that you gave DJ a chance. He gets the call from SRO US, and now does a heck of a lot of work. I think he's pretty much at most of the rounds anyway. And then to sort of like say, well, okay, well, Joe's done a favor for me. He's okay. Yeah, I want to pay it back. And now you've got a full. I mean, when you got the call, and you told your good lady, what was her initial reaction when you just said, I've just got a first full season and it's Porsche Sprint America, so I'm going to be all over the shop, along with doing everything for GSRC and everything else that I do. What was her first reaction, Joe?
Oh, she was excited for me. I mean, as much as she has no interest in racing, she's very supportive. She's even been supportive of my sim race broadcasting from the beginning. And I can't thank her enough for that, because I hear a lot of, folks, their partners are not nearly, it's like, oh, you're always on the computer, et cetera, et cetera. But she knows that this is both what I'm passionate about, and that, you know, this is my income. It has been for now a decent amount of my life. So we try to be supportive of each other. She actually changed her careers recently, and she's a tattoo artist now. Because we've both been artists our whole life, and this is her first time getting to do like an art related job. She's always kind of had to work retail and stuff like that. And so we you know, we do it for each other. And when she stepped into that, when you're a tattoo apprentice, you do not make money. So I was like, you know, go for it. Like we'll try and make it how we can. I'd rather see you happy, and this clearly is something you want to do. So
Yeah, it was kind of a bit like me, with my family being quite supportive. You know, my dad was my biggest doubter when I sort of decided to go into journalistic endeavors in motorsport, first of all. And I got contacted through a mutual friend who said, "Yeah, I've actually seen, you know, how you carry yourself on social media, but heard you're a big motorsport fan. I'll put you in touch with the editor." And he basically said, "Oh, send me a 1,500-word piece about anything." And so I just went on, I think it was a 1,500-word piece about Senna in 1988 at Monte Carlo, when he was doing a number on everyone and nearly did a number on his own teammate, and then whoops into the barriers before the tunnel. And then stormed off to his Monte Carlo apartment and wasn't seen for about the best part of 4 to 6 hours before he came back to the McLaren garage, and Ron Dennis wasn't apparently happy. But then my dad went, "You're never going to make anything in this business. I don't think you're going to do anything." But you know what that was? That negativity from him was a positive motivation. And then September 1st, 2020, got made redundant from my job with MSX International, it was a multinational automotive service provider based in, funny enough, in Motor City, Detroit. And I was working for them, and I was in Eastern Germany, traveling during COVID, flying on planes, PCR tests, the whole 9 yards. And we get a message in the group from them saying, "We need to have each of you come individually into the office." And I went, I feel the Jaws music burning in my ears. And then I went in the Tuesday after that weekend, and they went, "We're going to have to let you go." Big Cheshire Cat smile on my face. My dad had already said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Look, I'm old enough to know that I've got to do it. If I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it." And I am now into my 4th full-time season as a commentator, which is, and he goes like, "I'm so proud of whatever you do now," because I went to Bahrain for the Rotax Grand Finals in 21, and we had this welcome party, and the welcome party just so happened to be at just adjacent to the karting circuit, because what did we have right next to us? The Formula One circuit itself. So we went down the tunnel, walked about a mile or something like that to go into where all the buildings that were for the teams. And so I FaceTimed him from Bahrain, and he went, "Well, well, I think if Gunter said the middle word, it would have been very, very much appropriate, but it was 'you bastard' in no uncertain terms, with the F-bomb dropped in the middle." And but then he's like my biggest supporter, and he just helps me out. So it's like, whether it's partners, whether it's wives, whether it's family members, that we feel very, very fortunate and very, very privileged to be in these positions. But we've worked together quite a few times, and on the Williams Esports hosting, and that's been a gas, isn't it?
I love getting to do that. I remember I being over the States, I didn't get as much exposure to Formula One, but I saw enough to know, you know, plenty of who Williams is. And I've been following F1 for many years now as an adult. So to get to, you know, when they first pinged me, and said, "Hey, you know, we're looking for hosts for various shows." You know, you talked about how my wife took the news. You know, I got off my phone or whatever, because I think it was by text, and was just like, "Williams reached out to me, like, oh my God," like, just couldn't believe that I was being contacted by an F1 team.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love what they do with the esports stuff, just because the team is fun. Even the production team behind the scenes, like I feel like we have more fun than the drivers, honestly, putting the shows on.
Yes, because it's all like I think, what was it? We did British F4 esports, and we had, I think if I remember correctly, we did Not Kill, didn't we? And we had Josh and we had Moreno, and it was just like, this is going to be a bit hairy, and it got really, really hairy in race two. And Josh and Moreno were trying to do their best, and got some pretty good results on the board. But I think when we have the opportunity to do other broadcasts, I mean, especially when it's with such a team as Williams Esports, who have been going now, I think this is year 6, and they've just won the iRacing Daytona 24 Hours in the GTP class. I'm so looking forward to being on commentary with DJ over the remainder of the Drivers Club by Road Atlantic iRacing series, where we actually go from GT3 at Sebring, and then it's Daytona road course. So we're going to have our own miniature, like 1.1 hours of Daytona road course on the GTPs. I mean, like, I'm just like really, really buzzing, because everyone was like going, yeah, this, that, the other. And I remember doing the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona last year with Williams Esports. The less said about that particular event, the better. I'm not going to go into that one. But I think also coming on to the IRL stuff, when you've provided, like, say, the circuit commentary, as opposed to the live feeds that we see on GT World. And I have to give credit to Stefan Rattel and the entire team at SRO for every single round of Fanatec GT Americas powered by AWS, GT World Challenge Europe, Asia. We see all the TC Americas, GT Falls, all that kind of stuff. Everything is broadcasted live on GT World. What's it like when you're, because we've seen DJ having to go on for I think you've done the GR86 Cup last year as well, live for SRO.
Yeah.
Just explain to now I know the difference between this, but if you'd like to give in your own words, Joe, an understanding to the folks in layman's terms, what is the big difference between circuit commentary for the people at the track to the audience at home on a live broadcast?
The biggest one is that when you're doing what we call the PA for the circuit stuff, is that disappears into the ether. We don't even have, like, when I tried to update my reel, I was like, that's just gone. Like, I have no way to cut that stuff into there to show what I've done. But it goes on the resume, at least, whereas, that is now there forever. So there's the nerves of like, okay, what I'm going to say, which we have, on the sim racing stuff, but that doesn't see, I think, nearly as much attention as real world racing does. So when you're doing the real world racing, suddenly it's like, okay, don't screw this up, because everybody's going to see this, and that's the big thing. And the other thing is that when you're on the PA, there's definitely, not necessarily interaction, but you're trying to really get people into it. You're trying to build up the crowd and stuff like that. Whereas the broadcast stuff is definitely more, you're trying to be a guide and an educator, and kind of make sure that the audience understands what's going on, because the real people can actually just look around the track. Other than the parts they can't see, they can pick up on, what's out there. But the audience can only see what's on the screen. So you're really trying to make sure they're aware of the world and describing it and whatnot. And like, we can look out the window. So there's times where we can have to say that's like, well, the weather's doing this, or the teams down on pit lane are doing this, et cetera, even if it's not on camera, so that the audience has that bigger picture and has that information.
Yeah, that's always a big thing. And also sometimes with live broadcast, folks, when you actually have the imagery, you also have the live timing, you'll have messages from race control.
Yes.
But then when you're doing circuit comms, one of the biggest things that I found is that, take, for instance, I was recently at Daytona Milton Keynes. So it's arrive and drive, very variable weather conditions. My live timing is my smartphone.
Uh-oh.
Yes. Thank goodness for 5G connectivity, I must be completely honest with you. So I had the PA mic. I was given the relevant uniform to be part of the team. All that was all good. I had all my notes on a clipboard. And by the end of the day, the weather had deteriorated rapidly to the point that when the Super Champs, which is the afternoon action, we got to the D-Maxes, which are the Birol Art N35s with a Rotax 125cc engine by the side of them, producing 22 horsepower and could do 70 at full pelt. The weather, well, like we got to about 4 o'clock and I was looking up in the sky and I was like, these clouds are just getting a bit too dark for everyone's liking. So the lightweights went out, and just as they were about to do their shootout race, which was 15 minutes, the heavens decided to go, here's a lovely little sprinkling. And by the time we had the finals, we're like approaching 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. There I was, glasses off my face. They were actually like tucked in like this because they were literally getting pummeled. And unfortunately, when you're not in a commentary box and you're watching, you're trying to look and see what's going on the track, glasses aren't always the best idea because they mist up, they get hit quite significantly with the surrounding weather. And I remember the first thing I did when I got in the car, there was this almighty gust of wind, and I nearly got blown off my feet, even though I was uncomfortable. I was in comfortable Adidas Ultra Boost, so I was good. The feet were comfortable. The legs were getting a bit wet, and then I was just like thinking, please let this be over soon. I just want to get in the car and put the heated seat on. So yeah, as you said, Joe, circuit commentary, you've really got to have your eyeballs a little bit on stalks, and especially if it's a like 3-mile circuit, and then you know that the other part of the circuit is literally about a mile away from the commentary box. Sometimes it can be difficult to pick out when significant overtakes are happening. But then the live broadcast, as you said, is being that guide, and the circuit PA is when you're jivvying people up, like saying, "Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? We're about to go green," and then the tension builds. You hear the cheers from from the grandstands and from the people that have decided to camp over, like we see a lot at Daytona and Indianapolis. I mean, out of the circuits that you visited so far in IRL, what would you say, in no particular order, are the top 3? Because I know that 2 of them are one of them is certainly going to be Indy, if you've been there already.
Yes.
Indy's definitely one of them. What are the other 2 that really sort of stand out on your list? And like you say, no particular order. And just give me a couple of reasons why for each one.
Yeah. Indy, I mean, is because I'm biased. My parents actually met at the Indianapolis time trial. So like the 500 has been like the top of the top since I was a little kid. So when SRO had their 8-hour race there and I got invited, I just was over the moon, and that there's nothing that will compare to that. Road America is extremely nice. The nickname of the place is America's National Park of Speed, and honestly, it really is like a park. They upkeep it extremely well. The booth is really nice. The facilities are pretty great. Everybody raves about the food, and it's good. I guess it's just maybe I'm spoiled by other foods or something. It's more like it's great track food is what I would say. But it's not food that if you were anywhere else, you'd be like, oh, we got to have some of this sort of stuff. So like in general, Road America is definitely up there. Trying to think of what else I would place. I haven't been for a very long time, and it wasn't as a commentator, but when I was younger, I actually got to go to Watkins Glen, and that was a very cool experience. This was in the late 90s, so it might be a completely different facility now, but I remember really enjoying getting to go there. So that one would definitely be high up on my list. And another one I haven't really been as a commentator, but as a fan, I would put Daytona up there. Very, very cool, especially since they updated it. Gosh, I guess it's been like 10 years ago now. with the Daytona Rising stuff. It honestly, just going to see that is something else, just how tall those stands are and how many of them there are. And that's just the tri-oval area. But Daytona is a very, very cool racetrack that I highly recommend, going to an event for.
I've definitely got a little bit of a bucket list. I think Daytona's on it, Indianapolis is on it, Watkins Glen, Road America, Laguna. I mean, literally pretty much every circuit. Sebring, the list could be probably long as both my arms and from my shoulders down to my wrists on both arms as well. But yeah, I mean, it's always been on my bucket list to, even if I got the opportunity to go over there and someone said, look, we've been given your name, we want to get you out here, you interested? I'll be like, put me on the next flight over. Like there would be absolutely no hesitation. The same would be for like you or DJ coming over to Europe. Like say Ash got the opportunity through SRO to run the Twitch side of things for the Crown Strike 24 hours, and it's wonderful to meet her in person. I mean, even though it was slightly briefly, but it was just so good to see her in person. And I think that's one of the things that we as commentators or content creators or people that are involved in the industry, that when you get the opportunity to catch up in person, there's a very succinct and very different feeling altogether. Because if you're on a Discord call and it's voice only, you know that you can stick a finger up at the screen and no one's going to, you can flip the bird at somebody and they're not going to see you unless you put your camera on. But very, very different feeling when you're in the same space, you're in the same locality, you're literally, like a handshake away from somebody else or a hug away from somebody else. It is a very different feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and having built myself up, on the internet side of things, it was definitely a very different feeling making that transition to getting to go in person. And it's funny that you mentioned, honestly, getting to go over, because as soon as you started to mention that, I was like, oh my God, how could I not talk about, as far as top tracks that I've been to, Nürburgring. Last summer I got to go over to the Nürburgring, and my dad, my brother, and I also did the 24 hours of Le Mans. And both of those tracks were just jaw-dropping for obvious reasons. And once in a lifetime memories that I'll never forget. So, but yeah, it is honestly the in-person thing. I think that I am most struck by is getting to work with people in person. Absolutely love it so much more than doing it online, because of the fact that there's so much that you don't realize until you work side by side with someone, that just physically being there can affect how the conversation goes. Mm-hmm. Like myself and Joey Atterbury have worked together a lot. He's a former driver that we brought into like the virtual stuff. And weirdly enough, I've kind of given him opportunities, started poking his name in for real world commentary stuff, because he's actually really good at it. Mm-hmm. And when he and I got to share a booth together for the first time, we both were kind of like, wow, like our banter is so much snappier. It was always good, but like we can tell when one is finishing and the other can pick it up a lot easier when we have that physical presence of out of the corner of our eye kind of seeing, okay, they're wrapping up.
So after the discussion now about talking about being, in person and, being able to know when whoever's on color, whoever's on lead, exactly when to hand over. Sometimes it's as easy as just saying, well, Joey, what do you think? That kind.
Yeah.
And I think also that kind of sort of is very much the same way when you and I have been on broadcast before, where we've been on camera, so we can actually read the body language of the other individual, which is, I wouldn't say it's a close second. It's like a halfway house, isn't it, between doing it on a call and not seeing what the other person's saying or whatever, and then to doing it IRL. You kind of get the best of both worlds a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And it's becoming much more common too, which is the other interesting thing, because like I said, I've been doing this for 11 years now. And when we started GSRC, the question was asked of like, should we try and, put the commentators on camera and have cameras, et cetera, et cetera. And we were like, no. It's going to be too much of a pain, get everybody lit and get the feed in and sync everything. Now it's just like you have your choice of programs and things, and it's almost becoming now you have to have a webcam. If you don't, you're not going to get a whole bunch of gigs.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was funny because like I had to figure out how to light myself was part of the issue for me when that started becoming more common. And I actually still have, because I got myself like a ring light that crapped out after like a year or something. It was cheap. And what I have been using is like a foldable softbox that I have like propped behind my monitor, and it's worked the absolute best. And I'm nice and lit. I'm a little overblown, but like I don't need anything crazy Hollywood in here. So
yeah, I mean, for me, it's just a case of, okay, the light's behind me. I can adjust the brightness on my screens if I decide to, but
yeah.
but sometimes it does become the case where you just people might think, hang on, has he been on holiday recently? Because he looks like a bit of a red lobster at the moment. And that has happened for the last few episodes. But folks, this is warts and all. I don't want to sugarcoat it, because there's and I think you'll probably side with me on this, Joe, that there are times when you want a conversation just to be organic. You want it to just be natural. You don't want to have anyone spouting any BS, any lies, or whatever like that. It's more a case of, this is real, deal with it, and it can be edited in post. That's how I look at it, really.
If anything, I find I feel a little bit for the people that don't have the background that I do, because like I said, I have a film degree and everything, worked with a small production company for a number of years before I switched over to commentary. So like, I know how to set up the light and make it at least look decent. I know how to get the microphone into a position that it's going to sound decent and stuff like that. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm competent, and that's where it's difficult, because I do, I see commentators that like I watch their setup and I'm like, no, what are you doing? Like, you just have to do this or that, or like you need to position the microphone this way. The big bugbear for me is like people that have the microphone like way over here, and it's just like, no, like get the microphone close to you, get it up to you, get a pop filter if you need it, because otherwise you're going to get echoes and everything. You don't like, I'm in a regular old office, like, side bedroom, and I've got a blanket up on the wall, and that's all the sound dampening I need, because the microphone's nice and close. And it's little simple things like that.
It's kind of like with me with regards to the fact that, you have your setup, whereas I have mine, and I feel more comfortable with having a headset, because that's what a lot of us, when we're in IRL stuff, unless I was at Daytona Music Keys, where I just had a PA mic in my hand. So I was fumbling around with an iPhone 14, a clipboard that was getting even more saturated as the evening went on, and the paperwork was literally, by the end of the night, illegible, and it all got thrown in the trash. But I always find that for me, having a headset actually works better for me, because I feel that, okay, well, if I need to look something up, I can because everyone has their own respective setup. Like for me, I've got, for those wondering, you probably will have seen on my office tour vlog that I did last year, where I got an iMac 2019 5K 27-inch center screen with a Logitech StreamCam 1080p. I've then got two Samsung LED screens that are connected via HDMI, which means that both USB-Cs on the back of the iMac are used for propagating that. I've got a MacBook Pro M1 with the touch bar, like the entry level one, but it's good because I can have multiple different things on multiple different screens. And I think, Joe, what's your setup like when you have to commentate? How many screens have you got? And it differs from person to person, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I brought people on, I usually am advising them on stuff like that, especially with the screens, because if they come in with one screen, I'm like, you're going to have to get a second, at least. I have three. I still run out of space easily. So I got a 3-screen setup. The webcam was honestly the hardest thing to get set up for the longest time. Interestingly enough, it's actually on a speaker. It's on one of my speakers, and then on a box. And then it's like kind of between the monitors, so it doesn't block my view, because but I also need, I can't have it like over here, sort of thing, because I need to be at least be sort of looking at it, and also be able to see my monitors when when I'm on camera and stuff like that. So there's that. I am interested in getting a headset mic, and DJ has given me a good recommendation. So I would like to switch to that eventually. Because I think honestly that's the most ideal. This has just been more of a force of habit, and also what I can afford up till now. But other than that, I actually have, for commentary stuff, I have this old Logitech, like, I don't even know what it is. It was my roommate's at one point way back when, and it's my push to talk button. I just keep it in my lap usually, and like, because I don't keep it on auto detect for commentary stuff, so that it's like my cough button. So I push it when I'm ready to talk, and I just have it in my lap and whatnot, and I'm just doing my thing. So.
Yeah, I mean the thing is it's very different. Like, say for push to talk for me, if I'm on Discord, I will have the mouse cursor pointing over the microphone button. Now,
Gotcha.
Now the thing is with Macs, it is so difficult sometimes on Discord to set up a keychain button press. So the funny thing is that I don't just have the Magic Mouse that came with the computer along with the Magic Keyboard, because there's one of the things that we haven't actually talked about, which we'll get onto in just a second. Got the Magic Keyboard, which doesn't have the traditional like numerical pad on the right hand side.
Yeah.
But then what I also do is that just in case the Magic Mouse goes down, I have a good old Microsoft 2-button with a scroller. Because the thing is that sometimes you can't have enough equipment, but cable management. That is one of the biggest bugbears of any sim racing commentator or any sim racing driver. Wouldn't you agree, Joe? 100%.
I would be unwilling if you asked me to show you my setup, like turn the camera around. I would be unwilling, because I'm so ashamed of my cable management. I was just talking to Joey Atterbury about this the other day, because he's very OCD about his.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you don't want to see mine, because it's horrible. Because I also have a physical audio mixer here for when I'm producing shows. It's a lot more rare these days, because I'm much more focused on commentating, but it has, all audio ins and outs. And so that also has cables going everywhere along with the monitors, the controller, the mouse, the keyboard, the microphone stuff, the webcam. Honestly, I had to buy USB hubs, multiple USB hubs, just because I so quickly ran out of like USB ports that I could plug things into. So, and they have to be powered, because if I don't get a powered one, then suddenly it's like it stops detecting various devices and things like that. So yeah, it's you have to be comfortable with technology if you want to do this.
That's very, very true. And I think on that note, Joe Peak, thank you so much for jumping on board for episode 52. Folks, if you have been watching, thank you very much for watching along, and myself and Joe having a bit of banter, good old chin wag. And if you have been listening, thank you very much for your support for listening on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Downforce Radio. I'm also going to put in the description Joe's social medias along with GSRCs. So if you are someone that wants to get into commentary and you want to try yourself out in the sim racing world, well, GSRC is one of many places that are going to take on talent and help you be guided through your career. So Joe, thanks so much for your time, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So folks, as I always close out the show, if in doubt, flat out, we'll see you very soon for episode 53.